to the Drew Sutton Leadership Show, lighting the way with real leaders, real stories, and real impacts. Because when leaders stop growing, the darkness wins. All right, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Today, we're going to be answering the question, what if profitability isn't about cutting costs, boosting revenue, or chasing business buzzwords, but rather teaching your people to understand the business and think like owners? To answer that question today, we have Bill Fotsch. He began as an engineer, then he earned his MBA at Harvard Business School. He worked alongside Jack Stack and became a pioneering consultant with over 70 articles published in Inc. magazine. After 30 years of advising companies, he authored Partners on the Payroll and now brings research-backed proof that when employees understand the economics of the business, profitability and integrity rise together. So with that, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Drew. Good to be here.
Yeah, man. No, this is super fun. You know, on a personal note, so we have a mutual friend in common, Dave. Dave is a hyper connector out of Cincinnati. And as Dave and I have been working on a project together, he mentioned that you got to get in touch with Bill. It's going to be a great conversation. It absolutely was a great conversation. We super connected over our shared passion for creating holistic businesses, helping boomers that are in that in the silver tsunami exit their companies in a healthy way. We talked about ESOPs. We talked about private equity. We just like ran all over the place when it came to business. And I'm super excited about the research that you bring to the table.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to sharing it.
Yeah, man. Well, before we get into that, let's talk about your history here. You started as an engineer. Were you a mechanical engineer like myself?
Correct. That's the engineering you do when you really don't know what type of engineering you want to do.
I actually, because of all the computer programs that are, exist today, I actually refer to mechanical engineering as blacksmithing. We're just tinker toys in the new world. But you took that in the 80s and you took that to Briggs and Stratton, and you were a pretty young project engineer, and they accidentally threw a whole bunch of responsibility on you all at once. Talk to me about some of the fun stories from.
I think it was by fortuitous accident. After being a co-op student, which gave me an opportunity to see all kinds of different departments, I started and they put me in charge of the first two-cycle engine. Who puts a 24-year-old in charge of new engine design? Nobody. I mean, it was insane. But Briggs and Stratton never produced a two-cycle engine, so it was new. And frankly, I think most people thought it wasn't really ever going to see production. Amazingly enough, the snow thrower bonanza sort of took off, and we went from the concept of a two-cycle engine to 50,000 engines going down the assembly line in the course of 18 months, which is an insanely short period of time, but that's what really happened. It looked like you were about to ask a question, Drew.
Yeah, well, so what I love about this story is you were telling me that there was a gap between the marketing team, what they thought they were going to be selling, and what we actually started selling. So you tooled up, kind of missed the tool up.
Yeah, exactly right, Drew. It was, from a manufacturing and engineering standpoint, an amazing success. From a marketing or finance standpoint, it was a disaster. We tooled for 500,000 engines and sold 50,000. And the geniuses in marketing knew that everybody in the United States was going to buy a snow thrower with a Briggs engine. The folks in Alabama were less clear about that. And so
not a lot of snowblowers in Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of them. Not a lot of them. It's Miami, not so much either. Okay.
Right.
San Diego's light, as you get the drill. In any event, it actually ended up being a turning point in my life. And that is, they promoted me. They put me in charge of all small engines at Briggs, which is a pretty substantial role. But I knew that I just shepherded a financial disaster. I didn't know exactly how large it was. I knew manufacturing, yes. Engineering, yes. I love understanding how things work, but I sure didn't understand how marketing worked. and I sure didn't understand how finance worked. That's what headed me to business school.
I love that. So I think, but what I love most about this story, besides it's like just a classic slice of American corporate life, um, is that the marketing team, they missed something critical. The marketing team said, "Oh, this is a great technology. This is how we're going to market it. This is the total addressable market." And they were off by an order of magnitude, 10x. They were off by 10x because they mistook the potential for what the customer was looking for. Right. So they were saying, "This is what we can sell." But they didn't think about Alabama. They didn't think about Miami. They didn't think about half the U.S. that never gets snow. So they missed somewhere in their research. They didn't ask what's valuable, right?
Well, and they were bright folks.
Right.
Briggs was an engine provider. We didn't sell end applications. Toro was going to be the big customer. Toro, as a result of the snow thrower disaster, okay, their president was vetoed. They sent him out of it. Okay. So Briggs was getting a lot of signals from the marketplace about how great it was going to be. Honestly, it didn't make a lot of sense, but I'm a project engineer telling the vice president and the president of Briggs that this is going to be a loser wasn't something that I was really ready to do a lot of. Although, especially later on, as things were evolving, it started going like, wait a minute, I just signed the PO for the machine tools. How many engines do we have to sell just to make up those? So there were things that didn't make sense. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of companies, and I think Briggs was a pretty well-run company, but a lot of companies think about things departmentally.
Oh, yeah.
The notion of thinking about it holistically, oftentimes companies have a problem there.
I was working at a company, and I'm kind of a friendly guy. I know a lot of people, and so I knew these two people that sat next to each other in the purchasing department. And when you do helicopters, there's a collective stick which is down here and it goes up and down, and then there's a cyclic stick which is kind of in the middle and it goes around. So you need both of these to fly the helicopter. So this guy bought this cyclic sticks and this guy bought the collective sticks, and this guy got a 10% discount because he negotiated well, and this guy got 10% increase because he didn't negotiate as well. But both sticks were sold from the same company. And so one guy got a promotion and one guy got a bunch of demerits because the net result on the controls company, they were like, we're getting the same amount of money. We're getting what we want. But the purchasing department they weren't even looking at the whole purchasing department holistically. They gave one guy a bonus and one guy a demerit, but the net result of all the purchasing we were making from the company was the same. So yeah, there's that. Looking at things holistically and like seeing where they mesh is a big challenge.
Yeah, and frankly, I didn't understand that, including through business school and Bain and Company, the value of transparent information. I mean, frankly, no one at HBS in '83 when I was graduating, okay, was talking to me about how you got to create the transparent organization. That just wasn't part of the curriculum. Marketing's here, finance is here, production's over here. And most of what we did at Bain and Company, for me, Bain and Company was finishing school. It was it was building on the strategy, finance, marketing, which is what I had focused on at business school because I knew nothing. And so I thought, maybe I should know something. The big difference was at Bain and Company, they paid me, which I really liked. And all three of our kids were
really appreciated that.
Yeah, well, and especially all three were born while I was a Bain consultant, eventually leaving as a senior manager. But another thing that I learned, unfortunately, at Bain and Company was the dark side of ESOPs. And you say, what does that mean? I can tell you exactly. ESOPs can be great. Employee stock ownership programs, for those who are not familiar with the ESOP, can be really good. But the four founders of Bain and Company decided they wanted to cash out. Nothing wrong with that. And ESOPs were brand new, and they were going to take advantage of the ESOP. So here's how it works. They found some blind drunk to value the company at least double, probably more like 4 times what it was worth.
Right.
And then they found his cousin, who was running a bank, to loan the money to the company. And that was the cash that allowed the company to pay out the owners. Well, how do companies work when they're operating in incredibly high levels of debt? They can get through it. But we had a little dip on the economy. The number of layoffs soared at Bain & Company, which had never had a layoff. Lawsuits, all that kind of foolishness. Now, it turned out to be an odd promotion for me because I left Bain and ended up being a consultant to the same folks I worked with when I was at Bain. Except for, and they were paying me the same, they were paying the same amount for me, only the way things worked at Bain is a third of revenue went to the payment for the consultants, a third went to taxes, and a third went to profits. Well, all 3/3 went to me. So that was really nice. The folks at Bain & Company were a little annoyed about that, so they got in touch with the CEO and tried to squirrel things up. They weren't able to do that. In any event, it was later on I learned about the pros and cons of ESOPs. Because it's sort of like most things, if you don't think about the balance, and if everybody saw all the chips on the table, would everybody be happy? And if the answer to that is no, you're running for trouble.
So I love this idea. I heard a story, and this is, I read a lot of books because it's like partly I'm ADD and listening to books while I work out is helpful. Partly it's the best way, I just want to consume a lot of stories because actually, Sherlock Holmes said, if you know the answer to 1,000 crimes, you'll know the answer to the 1,001st. So I love to consume case studies. So Southwest Airline, this is back in the 80s when they sold. Herb Kelleher owns it, and he sold the company on a paper, rock, scissors contest. So he had like all the people, they rented out a stadium, and Herb Kelleher comes out there with like a silk jacket, the whole thing, and then just like a big prize fighter, and then they just do a paper, rock, scissors contest, and he sells the company. And I said to myself, I was like, that's very risky. Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you risk the company on a paper, rock, scissors game? But really what had happened was he was fine with either direct, the purchasers wanted a certain contract, he wanted a certain contract, but he was like, I don't care which way it goes. This way's fine for me. This way's fine for me. In other words, he liked both outcomes. They really liked this outcome and he liked this outcome. So what looks like kind of like a silly thing is actually him making sure that it doesn't matter which side of the pie you get. The old Southern custom is one person cuts the pie and then one person gets to choose the slice. Right. It's that transparency that makes sure it doesn't matter which slice I get, it'll be fine.
Years later, although, and we'll probably get to it, but let me jump at it right now.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of working with Southwest Airlines.
Oh,
that
did you?
was, yes, that was like 87 or 97, 98. And a couple of things. It was really a privilege that the company was incredibly well run. I thought I should be paying them for the privilege. But they were really intrigued with what we in those days call open book management or great game business. So I'm having the privilege of working there. A couple of things. A legend within Southwest. Here's the story. A passenger has had maybe 1 or 12 too many drinks.
1 or 12. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 1 and 12, and was really nasty to the flight attendant, which the pilot observed. And the pilot, again, it's a different environment. When they talk about family, it like really was a family. The pilot sends a note to Herb, laying this all out. So what does Herb do? Herb gets the name and address of this customer and fires the following letter to him. Dear thus and so, on this date, you did these things. Let me be clear, you are no longer invited to fly on Southwest Airlines. So much for the customer is always first. What do you think that did to employee morale at Southwest? That was, the guy was, and there are several other stories like that. That happened to be one that I saw firsthand. And so I don't think I ever told you this, Drew. So the Southwest thing really resonates with my wife and I when I finished business school. I assure you, we didn't have much money. We invested in one stock because I read the case study on Southwest Airlines and I was intrigued.
Yeah.
And that stock would go up and split and go up and split and go up and split. And I want to tell you, the amount of wealth that Herb generated and the whole team had generated was not small. So I am indebted, and it really pains me to see some of the things where the Southwest that I knew is, there's only a shadow of it left, which is unfortunate.
So I love this. You've actually brought something up that's kind of a soapbox of mine. So, and I want to, because you have this beautiful experience. You have 30 years in consulting, so you've seen a lot of rise and falls. You've been involved in what you call the open book, the great game of business, or open book, and you still are championing this transparency, which we're going to get into the new system you use, which is called economic engagement. But there seems to be a shift, and I have enough, I have enough gray hair now. I have enough seasons under my belt to have seen this shift that went from the president of the company will grab a hold of the offending customer and kick them out of the store if they treat their employees wrong, to this, it's almost a malaise now. Like, folks are like, well, of course the company's going to treat me wrong. So I think maybe it started with Jack Welch, the idea of shareholder value being the ultimate goal of business. What do you think, or can you think of a couple of stories or a couple of moments over the last 30, 40 years where we began to shift from that long-term thinking of I'm taking care of my people and we're producing an amazing product to I just need to get my exit because it's my turn to have a yacht?
Yeah, you have soapboxes, so do I. And you've just opened up one. Post World War II,
okay,
into the 50s. I'm a baby boomer, right? 55. Okay. If you look at the number of companies that were laying people off, you find that it is a much smaller number. And one of the things that was really interesting in those days is when a CEO announced a layoff, it was inevitably accompanied with an apology, a public apology, that he was personally responsible. And I think a good bit of that was the country had a common experience. Everybody knew somebody who fought in World War II.
Yeah.
And we won, so that was helpful. We all knew what Johnny Carson was talking about last night. We all knew what Walter Cronkite told us in the news. There's no Fox or CNN or, none of that stuff. We had a very holistic, common experience. We've largely lost that.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, by the way, again, good and bad, I like to see how things work. I've seen some really good applications of private equity, but they are not the mainstream. The mainstream is really simple and really profitable. And that is, you buy a company and you're already working on selling them before you close the deal, because you're measured on return on investment.
Yep.
Faster the turn, the higher the investment. You're going to load them up in debt. Chances are you've got your money out before the company is even sold.
Yep.
And I think it's really a shame that private equity companies can place debt on employees. They would say, we never do that. I would say, actually, I would use an expletive, and I'm not going to do that on the podcast. Okay.
Right.
But who, when the company heads in the wrong direction, when you've got a ton of leverage on it, who pays the bills? And the answer is the employees. We know it. We accept this. And we accept it because it is providing a really good return on the folks that invest in this racket.
Yeah.
The robber barons in the turn of the century were like this, except they built businesses. They did it in some pretty creative ways. I mean, and
there are many moments where I read about the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, and I'm like, well done.
Yeah, I go, well, you're right. It's some of the things were so well done that we now have laws against doing it.
That's right. 100% right.
Predatory pricing.
Yeah.
Although if you go back to Southwest Airlines, when Southwest was first started, this is the case that I did back at business school. When Southwest was first started, Texas Air and Braniff were the two competitors. They operated solely in Texas. What did Braniff do? Braniff dropped prices because they knew they had more capital. So all they got to do is run Southwest into the ground. And that'll be the end of Southwest. What did Southwest do? I think it was actually one of its finest moments. Herb had no idea what to do. And there were only about 100 employees. But one of the pilots was speaking with Herb and said, well, Herb, we need more revenue. And Herb said, yeah, but get more revenue. We need more planes, and no one is going to lease us another plane. And the pilot said, no, we need more flights. We don't need more planes. Herb says, how the hell are we going to do that? He says, well, one of the things that's true, when I arrive at the gate, I know the gate agent, I know the ground crew folks. We all know one another. I think we could turn the aircraft a lot faster. And if we could shave 20 minutes off every turn, we can generate 2 extra flights for every aircraft every day. Witness the beginning of the quick turn Southwest. That wasn't a CEO thing. That was a pilot figuring that out. Well, why do you think Southwest is so family? LUV is the stock symbol, right? Because they think that way. They think holistically. Very few folks do. And back to the PE guys. PE guys are to be respected. They're very smart.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But their ability to place debt on, they say companies, I would say employees. Something tells me just like just like the robber barons were eventually moved in with legislation. And at
Yeah.
least they build industries, oil, rail, steel. Okay. The PE guys just extract wealth. Sooner or later, I think the notion of some legislation that is going to curb some of the challenges that exist with private equity is going to
Yeah.
happen just like what happened to Robert Barron's. We'll see.
No, I totally agree. And you and I have talked about my new project, Jubilee Capital, which is a private equity play, but it's expressly to preserve small businesses. I'll be talking about more of that on different shows. I don't want to spend your show talking about that.
But let me just say, given some things I'm working on, I definitely would like to have a follow-up conversation on exactly that topic with you.
No, for real. And so this is a great segue here. So economic engagement is the basic premise that if your employees understand how the business runs, that they're going to be more engaged. And if they can see that when I run the business well, I win, then all of a sudden magic things happen. So I think the other part of the story that you were just telling about Southwest is that Herb gave everybody, once they, I don't remember how many days in a row it was, but once they achieved the 20-minute turnaround, he didn't say, great job, guys. You did an amazing job. I will see you in 4 weeks. I'm going to Cancun. He said, here's your check. He said, you guys flip these aircraft. You guys trusted me. You guys saved the company. So here is a substantial check that will change how you buy Christmas, how you buy your car this year. And he put it in a bonus check so that they got to see, oh my goodness, Herb paid us a bunch of money because we made him a bunch of money. And that was like the watershed moment.
Precisely correct. And one of the things that was very clear about that was just the end of what you said is like really important. Herb was not just being benevolent.
Right.
Herb was saying, here's the profits that we have created together. And then he was smart by saying, and of course, you're going to get a share of that. Which, frankly, I learned when I grew up in a family of 10, that sharing was just what you did. Okay. And you could only share what wealth you had.
Right.
So if you didn't generate some wealth, I'll close on this note, is my dad was a tough guy, a man of great faith, but a tough guy. And he used to say, money is no object, there is none. So of course, all of us became entrepreneurs. Of course, we were mowing lawns and shoveling drives and doing handyman stuff around the neighborhood. That idea, though, that most folks miss, Drew, is that here's the owner, here's the employee, and here's the customer.
Yes.
The gun company is a great example of this. You can't do well in the long term if all three don't thrive.
Yep.
You all three need to thrive, right? When Southwest had some challenges, didn't invest in its systems, and all of a sudden things are breaking down, the customer is suffering, which means the employers are going to suffer, which means the stock is going to suffer. It works in both directions. You get all three working together. We've got a recent article we just did this past week on the gun company. They're a great example of this. Their company logo literally has employees, the business, customers. That's just the way they think about things. Not enough folks think that way.
No, I get into this all the time. There's a number of folks, I have a pretty strong religious context, right? And so I'm in a number of conversations where the folks are, talking about the religion and how do I be a good religious business person. And most of the conversations, however, that I hear are somebody will say, oh, I found this really cool glitch. All you have to do is, and then the things that follow that statement is some version of cheat the employee or the customer of value and put it in your pocket. So it might be, well, you have the employees pay for their whole health care, or it might be, you shrink the box or you increase, you do a little bit of manipulation to do some inflation on the product that you're selling, or you get some cheaper components. But it's always precedented with all you have to do is, and then the next sentence is who I'm cheating and how I'm cheating so they can't notice it.
Well, and that notion that there's like, I'm running a business.
Yeah.
I am as a family person, that's over here, and who I am when I'm going to church is like over here. All three are separate. You go like,
right?
Really? You think
right.
When God looks down, he says, "Oh, wait a minute, he was doing that as a business guy."
That's right.
I get it. Right. No. The thing that is true, maybe this is a segue in a way, is the research we ended up doing subsequently proves it's not true. It just proves it's not true.
Yes. And this is why I was so excited. Let's talk about that research for a second. First of all, marketing is not research. This is one of your lines, right? We're not talking about, I went and I looked at the total addressable market and I did, that's a marketing activity. It's a business function. It's really important to be in touch with your customers, but it's different than research. So when you say the research that we did, talk to me about why that's so much different than marketing.
Yeah. Marketing is selling a premise. So you start with the premise. Then you gather information to sell the premise. Research is exactly the opposite of that.
Yes.
Research says, wait a minute, we're assuming they're going to test the premise. Which means, by the way, you have to first define the premise.
Yeah.
That's a pain in the butt. In objective terms, so you can then measure it against some success, some performance. Well, research has three characteristics that most folks hate, myself included. First, it takes a long time. I am not patient. Second, it costs a fair amount of money. And third,
yeah, it does.
You don't know the outcome until you're done with the research. Well,
yes.
Who the hell wants to sign up for that program?
Yep.
I would tell you, it's sort of true. I had a mixed relationship with the HBS professor I ended up working with. But to his credit, he was the individual who told me, Bill, if you really want to change the world, Galileo changed the world. He didn't do it with a winning smile. He didn't do it with an anecdote. He did it with research. I thought, shit, I can't come up with an excuse not to do research. And I want to tell you, that notion of 3+ years that we were doing this. So the individual I really give credit to was the research associate, Julia Banks. She didn't really have much of any background on what I was doing. So we were coming up with defining the premise. The fundamental premise was economic engagement drives substantially higher performance. That was fundamental. Okay. Then we got to do, well, what the hell is economic engagement? And we said, well, it broke down to customers and economic understanding and transparencies, performance-based compensation, and participation by the employees. Well, how do you measure each one of those? And she just beat the crap out of me. What do you mean by that, Bill? What are you talking about that? Well, what do you mean by that? Oh, God. It was like I'd just be exhausted after conversations with her.
Yeah.
It was just like that. She was great.
Well, I always tell people, as in leadership, it's really hard to get, it's really easy to be a yes man, right? Like you always have a team of folks and they're all saying yes to you. It's hard to find that person that'll say no, that'll challenge you on your theses, that'll say, no, that's not the way this works here. You've missed something. So all my career, I've always endeavored, when the boss says yes, when the boss says no, I say no too.
It's so true. And the other thing I would say that I give Julia credit for is she was intellectually curious.
That's good. Yeah.
That's really helpful. In any event, I'll give you a really good example about, so we were by and large, each wave of research, ended up doing 8 of them. Each wave of research was 50 to 150 companies. Now, the first time we did it was with credit unions, and we saw this amazing difference between those credit unions that were high on the economic engagement score, and they were like crazy outperforming the ones who were low. Okay.
So I'm gonna back us up just a little bit because I like the story you're telling, but I feel like we need to talk the 5 pillars first. So
okay, great.
Yeah, economic engagement is, and I'm going to break down how I think, and certainly correct me if I misunderstood. But the basic premise is your business will be a better functioning business and will make more money if everyone in your organization understands how they contribute to the success of the organization.
The only thing I'd add to that is even more brief is all of the employees are partners in the business. They understand the business. They can see what they can do, and the fact that they bring their unique capabilities to driving those results. That's really good. Okay, that's good overall description. But again, to test it from a research standpoint, we had to break that down. And the notion of understanding, do you have a process? Jim Collins would talk about mechanisms. Do you have a process by which you define and understand what customers value? Economic engagement.
There we go.
Do you translate that into the economics of your business? Cost per passenger mile at Southwest. Got it.
Right.
Is that information transparent to the entire organization so everybody can see how they're doing? That's transparency. Does everybody have a stake in how that's performing? Performance-based compensation. Are the employees actively encouraged in a continuous improvement sort of way to keep driving things? Those were the 5 parameters. But I really think just what you did there, Drew, was really well done. And that is, you want to understand generally, here's the two differences. You got 2 companies, they're identical.
Right.
Same locations, same technology, same equipment, everything's the same. The company on the left, the employees are hired hands. They come in, they do the work, they leave. The company on the right, they are engaged partners in the business, what we would call economic engagement. Which one do you want to invest in? Which one's going to give better customer service? Which one's going to give a better return to the owners? It's so intuitively obvious. What was really telling for us, though, was, and we were doing this by and large, industry associations, credit unions, Precision Machine Products Association, Hardy, which is a distributor organization. Then we did it with St. Gallen, the business school in St. Louis, in Switzerland. And the first time that we did the cut, Gabrielle was the research associate in St. Gallen, kind of the Harvard, evidently, of Switzerland. And they got 100 some odd responses, but they were all B Corp companies, but it was all an array of industries. And we thought, oh, damn, we're gonna have to cut this by industry to see what's going on here. And God love Yulia. She said, well, let's just look at the data. Just forget the industry thing. So we did it, and we saw exactly the same pattern that we saw with all the other waves, and that is top quartile had double the profitability of the average, and the average had double the profitable growth of the bottom quartile. All of a sudden, we realized this isn't just an industry-specific thing. We're agnostic as it relates to the industry. That's what the data showed.
So let me try to kind of put this in layman's terms, because I enjoy you pulled the data out and you walked me through the data, and I love graphs. I also realize that my sons are taking the ACT right now, and not everybody super enjoys charts. So if I understand what you're saying
Yeah.
if my employees come to work for a paycheck because they think their job is to do their job description and just come to work because they got a good job at Toyota or at your mechanic shop, listen, boss, I come in and I work my 8. That the difference between I work my 8 and I understand what really drives the business forward is essentially a 4x. So if they just come in to get a paycheck, you'll get one amount of money. And if they kind of understand the business, you'll get twice as much money. And if they deeply understand, so we'll just take I got a guy here, Big O Tires. He's down the road from me. He's the guy that does my oil changes. That dude understands. He understands my car, but he understands the business of Big O Tires. He's been there for like 5 years. He knows about how much he can get out of me. He never offers me the air filter because he knows that I don't need air filters or headlight fluid or any of the things that they sell. But he does nudge me towards the things that I do buy. So he knows me. He knows what I will buy. That dude makes so much money. So like he knows the practical day-to-day technical aspect, but also what drives the money in the business. And then you have somebody else here at Midas, and that kid charged me $1,000 that I didn't even be charged for an air conditioner he almost didn't fix.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm really glad you mentioned your son because agreed on everything you just said. And I find with my 2 boys and my daughter that they don't want to be just told what to do. Frankly, they want to contribute in a big way. They want to be fully engaged. Maslow's hierarchy of need talks about self-actualization. That's when people are really fired up. Well, why can't that exist at work? I mean, of course it can. The Southwest pilot who figured out how to beat Braniff. I mean, that is really getting it done.
Yeah.
So there is a compensation side of this, but there is a psychological ownership side of this that I think is at least as important. And frankly, at least in the newer generations, you can't buy engagement.
No.
And this is where, I mean, God love the folks at Gallup, the G12, that would be the industry standard at employee ownership. And they helped all of us understand 20 years ago that treating employees well, and they had 12 questions, they defined that, is a good thing. And it certainly is. Okay. Nowhere in the Gallup 12 is there any mention of customer or profitability. Well, they took us a ways, but they took us to treating hired hands nicely. They didn't take us to partners. Because to be a partner, you got to understand the customers and you got to understand the economics. And that notion of engaging people intellectually is huge, and sadly missed with most companies.
No, I totally agree. Sad, we are kind of running out of time on the show here. We may have to do a second one because I really, this is such an important concept. What I love about the work that you've done is that you've done heavy, serious research. We're talking PhD students at fancy law schools. This is like Bain and Company plus sort of work. And what you've uncovered here is the permission that most of us wanted to do all along, but we felt like we couldn't, which was when you treat your employees as partners, which by the way solves the Gen Z stare. It solves the quiet quitting. It solves all of the problems that are in the workforce today are not HR problems. Inherently, we know that you paid us to be smart, but you're treating us like you're stupid. You're shaving the edges of the coin. You're shaving off the pennies and keeping them for yourself. And then you want us to act like we're partners. The contract's broken. We all know it's just a hired hand situation over here. And if you want to make a difference, the solution to your employee engagement is economic engagement. Help them understand what you're trying to do, what they're trying to do, and how they succeed when you're involved.
Exactly.
Man, it gets me so excited. I'm
Yeah,
kind of over to you.
That's the mark I want to make on the world. just that. And a lot of people, the other piece, and the research is kind of helping this, is a lot of people say, yeah, okay, it takes years to get there. So I'm a PE guy. I could give a damn about what you're talking about. Okay, that is not working for me. And I'd say two things. It's shorter than you think, and the payoffs are a hell of a lot larger than you know. And Drew, I'm like a kid in the candy store, both in this work and in speaking with you. I think you're doing a really important thing here, and that is that there are various folks that I have been canceled by who don't want this message out. I assure you that is true.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I think of myself not in the same league, but directionally, Galileo was canceled by the Catholic Church. He was under house arrest for the balance of his life because he had the audacity to show that, in fact, the earth is not the center of the universe. There are those who don't want this. But truth has a way of leaking out, and I think you're doing a hell of an important job in helping the truth leak out.
I love it, man. I appreciate that. It's such a cool partnership to start with you. I remember getting to know you. I was impressed intellectually. I was impressed by your background, both the depth and the breadth that you've of experience that you bring to the table. But what I was really excited about is your ability to articulate with data, substantial amounts of data, that if we want to accomplish the thing that we all say business is about, which is profitability, there is a solution where we can act like decent human beings. Again,
God made an earth for us to flourish.
Yes.
And we keep looking for scarcity. It's
yes.
just crazy. I was going to say, as I sense that we're wrapping up, that's fine. A couple of things. One, for all members of your audience who are interested, we've now, the tool that has emerged from our research is we're now sharing with various organizations. Typically, we charge about $700 for the to do the research tool. All of your individuals listening, it is free to them for the asking. And consistent with my impatience, first 10 who do, I'm going to send a book to, from me to them, thanking them for moving this along. Because I've got various virtues, but patience is not one of them.
No, and the silver tsunami that we're hitting here, and I do need to wrap up the show, but the silver tsunami that we're hitting here, where baby boomers are asking themselves, I've given my life to this thing. It might be the local mechanic shop. It might be the local lawn mowing. It might be HVAC or plumbing, or it might be something larger, medium, large size factories. The owner says, I built this thing. I guess now it's my payday, because that's all we've been told for the last 30 years. When is your exit? We refer to it as, what's your exit plan? As in, get out of here. What's your exit plan? But there's a better way, and it doesn't have to lump debt onto your organization. My dad was a veterinarian, and he sold to his partners, and that practice is still thriving. There is a way to leave your legacy in a way that you're proud of and that you do well with, and that your employees understand the business and you don't have to carry that weight yourself.
That may be a good follow-up opportunity with you. Suffice it to say that I completely agree. There is breadth and depth in terms of how that can happen and how you can thrive even more so as the owner, but also have a succession plan that you can be smiling about when you leave. So if that would be of interest, and you think your audience has an interest in kind of the applying this to succession plans, we've written a couple of articles on that. I'd be happy to do something with you on that.
No, we should definitely talk about that. But in today's show, we are out of time. So listen, if you are a small business owner and you're asking yourself, we're living in this constrained economic situation that we have. The politicians say everything is fine. We all know that everything's tight. The answer to it is not more marketing projects. It's not more buzzwords. It's not controlling your costs. It's not doing all the things that somebody's trying to sell you a service for. What you need to do is rethink how well your team and yourself really knows the economic engagement of your organization. How are you creating value for your customer? And does everybody in your organization fall into line with that? And you will start hitting those outsized returns that you know you can get, that we know you can get. And if you want more help with that, reach out to Bill Fotsch. I put his link in here. It's economicengagement.com. You can find him on LinkedIn. I think it's LinkedIn. It's just Bill Fotsch.
Right.
Tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. Take that engagement survey, get some insight into your organization that will open up the potential for the 2X. If you're kind of on the beginning end of this, if you're already running a pretty tight business, you might find another 2X in there just by bringing your team up to speed on their economic engagement. With that, tell him you saw him on the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. We are out.